Parents chose my sister's housewarming party over my wedding because I refused to invite her after she punched me. Now, my grandparents are walking me down the aisle instead. For a very long time, I have always known that my parents loved my older sister, Vicky, more than me. She was the planned child while I was the result of an accidental pregnancy just 10 months later. They probably didn't even want me but decided to keep the pregnancy anyway. My mother's parents had passed away before I was even born, but my dad's parents were very much alive, so they took on a significant role in my upbringing. Grandma and Grandpa were the constants in my life, providing the love and support that I often felt lacking from my own parents. I remember so many instances when my parents would leave me behind with my grandparents and only take my sister for trips. When I was young, I didn't mind because it was fun living with my grandparents, but as I started to grow up, like when I was 6 or 7 years old, I realized just how unfair this was. But my problem wasn't just with my parents. It was also with my sister Vicky. While I harbored no ill will toward Vicky, I couldn't help but feel like an unwanted addition to the family. She knew that as well and made me feel like a stranger every day in my own home. She would always compete with me for everything, be it about grades, attention from our parents, or even the smallest accomplishments. It felt like a constant battle for validation, and I was always on the losing end because my parents preferred her always. As a result, I would feel really inferior and we never quite saw eye to eye. Our relationship seemed more like a perpetual contest, with her consistently coming out on top. On one occasion, she wanted to be friends with a group of girls, but because she was nerdy she was afraid to approach them. One of the girls and I had art classes today, so she introduced me to the rest of the group and we all would hang out together. Vicky was so jealous of this that she made my parents talk to me about including her also whenever I was hanging out with them. I tried to fight, but my mother called me selfish while my dad said she was my sister and I should look after her. Begrudgingly I agreed and introduced Vicky to the rest of the girls. Now Vicky doesn't really have a lot of friends, so she can come off as overenthusiastic, so she would constantly try to impress the girls in our group, often coming across as intrusive. Despite her efforts, she struggled to find her place among them, and the awkward tension between Vicky and the other girls was always palpable. For example, one of the girls had a crush on a guy, so Vicky took it upon herself to approach the guy and let him know that the girl liked him. He laughed because he was not interested and went and told everyone about it, which embarrassed the girl. After this, the girls told me very firmly that they didn't want me to bring Vicky with me to our hangouts, so I agreed. However, Vicky wasn't having it. She threw a tantrum when she found out that the girls wanted nothing to do with her and went to our parents insisting that I should not hang out with these mean girls either, since I was her sister and I should stand up for her. I refused and told her that it was her own fault that they didn't want to be friends with her, but my parents as usual supported her. They lectured me about how Vicky had no ill intentions and that I should try to convince the girls to forgive Vicky, but that if they didn't then I should cut them off also. I refused and put my foot down. I liked hanging out with them and unlike Vicky, I wasn't going to jeopardize my friendship in any way. I told my parents that I had enough and it wasn't up to me to find friends for Vicky. My parents were pissed and gave me the silent treatment for weeks, but I'm glad I stuck to my guns. This group of girls has continued to be my friends till today and are basically like my sisters. I have cried with them, laughed with them, and shared some of the most meaningful moments of my life. However, at that time, it was really hard for me to stand firm in my decision. There were moments when doubt crept in, when I questioned whether I had made the right choice in prioritizing my own happiness over what they wanted. This was not the only reason Vicky grew to hate me. There was also another incident of a boy. She had a crush on a guy and I had no idea about him. He and I would sit together for some classes because we were friends. He tried to ask me out for junior prom, but I declined politely since I was already going with someone I liked. Later, when Vicky found out, she made a hue and cry about it, telling my parents how I always take things she wants and that I was knowingly flirting with the guy for months. She called me a bunch of nasty words which no one should say to their own sister, and told my parents how she wished I was not her sister. My mother sided with her, telling me how it was wrong of me and that as a sister I should respect girls' code. I tried telling them that I wasn't even interested in the guy and had declined his invitation, so she was free to ask him if she wanted, but Vicky refused to let it go. Looking back, I think she knew the guy would have rejected her anyway, so she just wanted to take her frustration out on me since he asked me instead of her. Once my dad took me out for ice cream, telling me that he wanted to spend some father-daughter time with me. Now this never happened, so I was really pleased. However, he started asking me a bunch of questions like if me and my boyfriend were being careful, if my boyfriend came from a good family, or if my boyfriend and I ever did drugs. I was taken aback by his line of questioning and asked him what he meant by all this. This is when my dad revealed that Vicky had been making up stories and telling my parents for months that I was doing drugs and drinking alcohol with my boyfriend. This was a complete lie and I showed my dad my phone for him to verify that Vicky was lying. Later, when my dad confronted her about all the lies, she tried to justify that no one our age just hangs out with a guy and that I was hiding things from everyone. I was so pissed that I yelled at her for trying to make unnecessary drama and told her that it wasn't my fault that she had no one to date, but that she needed to keep her nose out of my business. Vicky didn't like it and punched me. This happened out of nowhere since he had never been physically violent before. My nose started bleeding as I fell down on the ground, clutching my face in pain. My parents rushed me to the emergency room, and all the while they were pleading with me to not file a police complaint against Vicky. They kept saying how it would ruin her life while I was sitting in the back seat clutching my face. Vicky didn't even care, nor did she apologize. Later, when the nurse asked me about the incident, I told her the truth and she called CPS. My parents were furious with me for involving CPS, viewing it as a betrayal of family loyalty. In their eyes, Vicky's actions were dismissed as a mere accident, an isolated incident that should not warrant such drastic intervention. They pleaded with the authorities, insisting that Vicky was not a danger to me and that her actions were out of character. In the end, Vicky was let go, but they warned my parents that they would keep a close eye on our situation in case any other accidents happened with me. As you can imagine, Vicky was really shaken up and so were my parents. Later, my parents told me that they were disappointed in me for trying to ruin my sister's life. My mother started to cry and told me how I was tearing the family apart by involving outsiders. My father's disappointment was palpable, his words heavy with reproach as he questioned my decision to escalate the situation. I told them firmly that I wanted Vicky out of my life and they agreed. I did feel guilty involving the authorities, but for the first time, I felt safer at my own house once Vicky had been formally warned. My parents had a separate conversation with her, and since that day, she stopped talking to me altogether. I very much preferred this over her constantly hovering around me or trying to insert herself into my life. When my grandparents found out about this incident, they asked me to pack my bags so I could live with them for the remainder of high school. They informed my parents, who did not protest much, so I left to live with my grandparents. Unlike my parents' place, I felt safe and loved here. The remaining days of high school went well and I made lasting memories with my friends. My parents never once visited me or called me throughout all that time. I knew they were happy with their beloved daughter, so I never tried to contact them, even though it hurt me that they could so easily discard me like I was nothing. When I was graduating high school, my parents only showed up to cheer for Vicky. They didn't even congratulate me or approach me, and it felt like I was just a stranger to them. However, my grandparents were there and scolded my parents for being so blatantly obvious about their favoritism. I don't know what my grandfather told them, but my dad later approached me awkwardly and congratulated me. Later, I found out that I was accepted into a good college with a full scholarship. I was so happy about it because I was dreading asking my parents for any financial help. I informed my grandparents about this and they offered to take me out to a nice restaurant for dinner. After dinner, my grandmother posted pictures of me on her Facebook account, writing a long caption about how proud she was of me for being such an exceptional student. Our relatives soon found out about it and they chimed in congratulating me. I guess some of them might have reached out to my parents, who had no idea about all this. Instead of feeling happy about it, my mother called to tell me the next day that Vicky had locked herself in her room, crying, because she had not been accepted yet by any college and that I was knowingly trying to make my sister feel bad about her grades by talking to all our relatives. She told me how this was all my fault because Vicky was apparently depressed after the CPS incident and I had pushed her into bad grades. I was so unbelievably heartbroken that my own mother could blame me for such a thing that it was the last time I ever talked with her for a very long time. My grandparents helped me move into my college dorm. Due to my high school boyfriend's college being far away from me, we had broken up, so I went into college single and ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with newfound independence and determination. The breakup had been difficult, but I was excited to meet new people. This is where I met Rob. He and I were both freshmen and we both spent half of our days in the library. Rob was unlike anyone I had ever met before. His quiet demeanor and studious nature mirrored my own, and we quickly found common ground in our shared love for academia. As the weeks turned into months, our friendship blossomed into something deeper, and I realized that I had developed feelings for Rob that went beyond mere friendship. Being an extrovert, I was quite upfront about my feelings for Rob, and I was surprised to know that he felt the same way. We started going out and have been going 8 years strong. My grandparents have met Rob and they absolutely adore him. I have met Rob's parents, who literally treat me like their own daughter. On occasions, Rob's mother has even confessed to me how she had always wanted a daughter, so she is glad that Rob met a wonderful person like me. To be honest, this is the first time I have been surrounded by family members who like me and don't actually resent me. I have told Rob stories of my childhood growing up and he listens to me with empathy and understanding. Throughout these last 8 years, my parents have hardly contacted me except to send me an occasional birthday text if they remembered, but that is it. Recently, Rob and I got engaged. He proposed to me while we were trekking to our unusual spot to watch the sunrise, and it was a dreamy proposal. It was so sweet how nervous he was to pop the question to me, and I had no doubts in my mind when I accepted the proposal. I posted pictures of my engagement on my Instagram and also informed my grandparents about this. They were so happy for me and congratulated us on our future. I guess the news must have spread because my parents called me out of the blue to congratulate me as well. I thought it was just a casual conversation since we had not